Matthew Long, and I'm going to be talking about, basically how to like understand pointers and such, or at least how I understand them. Because when I first, learned about pointers, especially because it's like kind of a C thing, like, what, basically, what's the point? Why bother? Can't we just use variables? Like, seriously. Well, for the most part, you just do. You don't really need them for like the early stuff, but like once you get to crazy like big programs, it'll start to make a whole lot more sense. Cause C doesn't like really deal with certain things especially when you do functions. But like, so you get a variable, and you assign a pointer to it, and you're like, oh, well, why would I just? There's no point. But there is, I promise. Because you got variables and memory. And let me tell you, you really don't want to lose your memory. Because C variables, they hold values. They can change. You can pass them into functions. But you pass them by value. And that's important. You can declare them in arrays, or as an array, and they're totally cool, totally awesome. But when you pass them by value, that's when things become a bit of a problem depending on what you're trying to do. Because if you pass them by value, what happens is the old value just kind of gets forgotten in a way. Like, whether or not that's entirely right, just the point is it's there, and it's still there, and you probably don't want that. The new value takes the place of the old value, but not in the old value's like spot in memory. Because the old spot is still taken up by some data. And if you do that a lot of times over and over and over, you can end up with memory leaks. And that's kind of what happens if you ever played like a game and you like let it run for a while, and it gets really, really slow. Yeah, it's not clearing out the data. So you don't want to have that, and that's a very real problem in C. Other languages have it too, but it's especially prevalent in this one. So what do? You use a pointer. Because pointers, as you're probably aware, they point to a spot in memory, and you can edit the spot in memory. And instead of like copying the value and keeping the old spot, it just overwrites the old spot. And it works kind of the same, but you're passing it by reference instead of by value. And for those of you out there, I understood that reference. Well, what happens? So, as mentioned, the function or whatever you're trying to do will instead read the point in memory that the data is at, and will actually replace the value there instead of just copying it and making a new one and possibly just leaving it all over the place. The old value gets replaced, and no more memory leaks. And that's a good thing. You don't want those memory leaks. So they can't do that. You can't pass the value to a function by themselves. If you try to pass a variable to a function, all it will do is just copy the value. So if you pass like x to the function foo, you won't be passing x itself. You'll just be passing, like, if x is 2, you'll just be passing the number 2 to it. But if you pass a pointer to that, then it will actually pass, like, not necessarily x, but the location that x is in. And the reason that matters is because if you edit the value that the variable is holding, you can actually, like, edit the value that's in the main function instead of just editing what's in the function itself. So if, like, x in the main function is 10 and you make it 20 in the like, I don't know, add sum, then it will still be 10 in the main loop, which is may or may not be what you want. But if you're trying to edit x in, you know, the main function, that's not, you want to pass it by a pointer. So yeah, if you just make sure to remember that if you want to edit the value itself outside of the function, use a pointer. It'll save you so many headaches. And let's go over arrays a bit too. So arrays, you can kind of think of them as like a variable list. You know, like they're really more just like a bunch of values that are related all right next to each other in memory. And that's why you can do certain things with pointers with them. But you know, you can add the values. They can be multi-dimensional, but that's a little bit past what this talk is about. Just know that you can make them like 2D, 3D. You might be able to make them 4D. I wouldn't. That seems like a headache. But you could. And they're great for loops. Some of them, you know, you can think of them as a list of variables, or in some cases a string of variables. So what's the big deal? Well, you know, you can just like use them in functions. It's like real simple stuff. Basically, anything you can use a variable for, you can use an array for. Just like instead of having to declare like 17,000 variables, you can just declare one with like 17,000 you know, properties to it, or parameters. And they're perfect for loops because, as mentioned, you don't have to variables just to iterate over and over. And you can also use the length of the array to easily determine how many you actually need, how many times you need to loop over it. So, you know, if you have an array named bar as the example, and your control variable is I, you can put the I in the bar, the arrays like brackets, square brackets, and it will loop that many times over the array, as many times as it has variables inside of it. Of course, in C, you got to be careful because you cannot edit them. You can't edit the size after it's declared. But if you know you need like a lot of a similar variable type, like integers, and especially if they're like closely related, definitely use arrays. And real quick, let's go over strings. This one's, it's pretty simple, I promise. So strings, you can change the individual variables of a string. Like if you have a string that says hello world, you can change like the first letter, because it's basically just an array. Not entirely, but you know, you can. You cannot copy the whole string to another without like using some kind of specialized function, you know, like string copy. But That requires some libraries, and C does not allow that by itself out of the box. You need a library for that. There's a standard one, but you can use them in the same way you'd use an array. So like if you tried to, you had a string with the name like string, you could just access the technically the like fifth character, because index of 0 and all that. You could access the fifth character using string 4. And it will always end with a null value, and this is important because it will always add the null value at the end if you declare it normally. If you declare it in a way where you separate them in characters, you have to put the null value, or it'll just mess up on you, and that's not good. You can pretty much just think of them as immutable arrays, at least in C. Can't mess with them, but anyway, any questions? No? Well, thank you.